Emily Thompson always believed she could recognize who belonged in her world, but on that day, a man in dusty boots walked into the cafe and challenged everything she knew. What started with a spilled coffee turned into something that would change her life forever. Emily Thompson was the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went, not just because of her impeccable beauty, but mainly because of the aura of sophistication that emanated from her every gesture. Her high heels echoed on the marble floor of Cafe Milano, the most exclusive coffee shop in the Upper East Side of New York City, where she made sure to have her breakfast every morning before heading to her architecture firm. On that sunny Monday morning in October, she pushed the tempered glass door of the coffee shop using her perfectly manicured nails in dark red. The aroma of freshly ground coffee invaded her nostrils as her eyes scanned the European-inspired decor. Something, however, clashed with the usual harmony of the place. Seated at one of the corner tables was a man who looked like he had just stepped out of a Midwest farm. His boots were slightly dusty, his faded jeans had a few small tears at the edges, and his plaid shirt in shades of green and brown was rolled up to the elbows, revealing sun-tanned arms. He was calmly drinking his coffee, oblivious to the curious and sometimes derogatory glances from other customers. How did someone like that get through the door? Emily thought to herself, adjusting her Prada bag on her shoulder as she headed to the counter. The standards of this place are really slipping. "The usual, Melissa," she said to the barista, who already knew her preference. "Double espresso, no sugar with a touch of cinnamon." While waiting for her order, Emily checked her messages on her latest iPhone model. Her schedule was packed, as always. 3 meetings with important clients, a business lunch at the plaza, and in the evening, a cocktail party for the opening of a contemporary art gallery. Her life was a succession of sophisticated events and high-level commitments. "Your coffee, Ms. Thompson," Melissa announced, handing over the porcelain cup on a small silver saucer. Emily took her order, and as she turned, her heel slipped slightly on the polished floor. Reflexively, she tried to balance herself, but part of the coffee ended up spilling onto the table of the man in the plaid shirt. "I'm sorry!" He stood up quickly, with a genuine smile on his face, grabbing napkins to clean the table. "Are you all right? You didn't hurt yourself, did you?" His voice had a soft Midwestern accent, and there was a sincere kindness in his gaze that for a moment almost made Emily feel bad about her earlier thoughts. Almost. "It's fine," she replied dismissively, looking him up and down. "Just be more careful next time. I imagine places like this aren't very common for someone like you." The man didn't lose his smile, but something in his green eyes subtly changed. He simply nodded and sat back down, turning his attention to a folder of documents on the table that Emily hadn't noticed before. Satisfied with her display of superiority, Emily headed to her usual table, where her friend and business partner, Sarah Parker, was already waiting. Sarah was just as elegant as her, wearing a Chanel suit and discreet but very expensive jewelry. "Did you see that?" Emily commented, subtly nodding towards the man. "How did they let someone like that in here? He must have gotten lost looking for some roadside diner." Sarah gave a restrained laugh, but her eyes showed some concern. "Emily, you need to stop judging people so harshly. Sometimes I worry about your arrogance." "It's not arrogance, Sarah. It's good taste. Can you really imagine someone like that in our circles?" Emily took a sip of her coffee, making a face when she realized it was warmer than she would have liked. Besides, people of our status need to maintain certain standards. The man finished his coffee and stood up, carefully putting away his documents in a leather briefcase that Emily noticed with surprise seemed to be of excellent quality. As he passed by her table, he gave a slight nod, still maintaining that calm smile that for some reason began to irritate her deeply. "Have a good day, Mom," he said politely before leaving. Emily rolled her eyes, turning her attention back to Sarah. "Let's talk about more important things. Tonight's cocktail party, for example. I heard half of New York's elite will be there. It's a unique opportunity to get new clients for the firm." Sarah agreed, but her eyes still followed the figure of the man who had just left. "Yes. But first, I need to tell you about a new project that came up. It's big, Emily. Very big." Bigger than the shopping center we're designing? Much bigger, Sarah smiled, reaching for her tablet. It came in last night by email. It's for the Montgomery family. The Montgomerys? Emily's eyes widened. The owners of that agribusiness empire. Exactly. They want to completely renovate the historic headquarters of their main ranch. It's a multi-million-dollar project. And they specifically asked for us. Emily felt her heart race. The Montgomerys were one of the most traditional and wealthy families in the country. Having her name associated with their project would be a giant leap in her career. And when do we meet the client? That's the interesting detail. Sarah bit her lip, as she always did when nervous. The main heir of the family wants to meet us today. He said he already knows us by sight. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll continue. The rest of the day passed like a blur for Emily. Between meetings and phone calls, her mind kept going back to the Montgomery project. She knew the family's history through business magazines and social columns. They were practically royalty in American agribusiness, with an empire built over generations. At 7 o'clock sharp, Emily walked through the doors of the Artemis Gallery, where the opening cocktail party would take place. The space was stunning, with a double-height ceiling and contemporary art installations strategically distributed. She was particularly proud of the emerald green dress she had chosen, an exclusive model she had custom-made especially for occasions like this. Emily, Sarah waved from a corner of the room near a group of well-dressed people. Come here, I need to introduce you to someone. Adjusting her hair and rehearsing her best smile, Emily walked towards her friend. Her heart, however, almost stopped when she recognized among the people in the group the man from the coffee shop. But now he was completely transformed. He wore an impeccably tailored Italian suit. His hair was elegantly styled, and those worn-out boots had given way to Italian leather shoes. Emily, I want to formally introduce you to Luke Montgomery, Sarah said with a smile that mixed amusement and nervousness, the heir of the Montgomery family and our new client. Time seemed to freeze. Emily felt the blood drain from her face as Luke extended his hand to greet her, displaying the same calm smile from the coffee shop. It's a pleasure to see you again, Miss Thompson, he said, with that soft accent that now seemed even more disconcerting. I hope your coffee improved after our little incident this morning. Emily needed all her social experience to maintain her composure. She shook his hand mechanically, feeling the firm and gentle touch, noticing the discreet Patek Philippe watch on his wrist, a piece that cost more than many apartments. Mr. Montgomery, she began, but was interrupted by a warm laugh. Please, call me Luke, he said, turning to include other people in the conversation. As I was explaining to your partner, our family has big plans for the historic ranch headquarters. It's an ambitious project that will require sensitivity to preserve history while bringing modernity. Emily watched astonished as Luke discussed architecture with fluency and deep knowledge. His opinions on historical preservation and sustainability were articulate and well-founded. How could she have misjudged this man so badly? The ranch has been in the family for 5 generations, Luke continued, his green eyes shining with pride. It started with my great-great-grandfather, who came to America with just a few coins in his pocket. Today, besides agricultural production, we have one of the largest renewable energy operations in the country. With each word from him, Emily felt herself sinking deeper into her own embarrassment. She remembered her derogatory comments at the coffee shop, how she had treated him with disdain just because of his simple appearance. Now he was there, commanding everyone's attention with his charismatic presence and knowledge. Actually, Luke continued, turning specifically to Emily, it was your reputation as a perfectionist that attracted me to your firm. That coffee this morning was, let's say, an interesting test. Sarah choked on her champagne, trying to disguise a laugh. Emily felt her cheeks burn. Mr. Mon, Luke, about this morning, I really apologize. My behavior was perfectly revealing, he completed, still smiling, but with a challenging glint in his eyes. And that's exactly why I want you on this project, Emily. You have an eye for details and high standards. You just need to, perhaps, broaden your vision a bit about what constitutes true quality. The conversation was interrupted by a group of businessmen who wanted to talk to Luke. Before walking away, he turned to Emily one last time. "Tomorrow I'll give a detailed presentation of the project at your office. Oh, and don't worry about the coffee. I'll bring some special beans from our ranch. They're, how can I put it, more sophisticated than they appear." When Luke walked away, Emily needed to lean on a nearby column. Sarah approached, offering a glass of champagne. To her friend. "So," Sarah began, barely containing her smile, "still think he doesn't belong in our circles?" Emily took a big sip of the drink, trying to organize her thoughts. How could she have been so foolish, so superficial? Luke Montgomery had given her a lesson she wouldn't soon forget. And the worst part, now she would have to work directly with him over the next few months. "Sarah, I'm ruined," she muttered. "After my behavior this morning, he'll never take me seriously professionally." "On the contrary," Sarah replied, observing Luke from across the room. "I think he's very interested in working with you. In fact," she made a significant pause, "I think he's interested in more than just the project." Emily followed her friend's gaze and met Luke's eyes turned in her direction. Even from a distance, that calm smile was still disconcerting, but now for completely different reasons. Her heart raced, and for the first time in a long time, Emily Thompson wasn't sure of anything. The next morning dawned with a light rain over New York City. Emily arrived earlier than usual at the office, something rare in her routine. She had spent the night practically sleepless, tossing and turning in her penthouse apartment bed, thinking about how she would face Luke Montgomery after everything that had happened. The aroma of premium coffee invaded the office even before Luke appeared. He arrived punctually at 9 o'clock, carrying a leather briefcase and a small carved wooden box with the Montgomery family crest. "Good morning, Emily." He smiled, placing the box on the conference table. "As promised, I brought something special to start our day off right." From inside the box, he took out a small package of coffee and began to prepare the drink in an Italian coffee maker he had also brought. The aroma that spread through the room was intoxicating. "This coffee," he explained while working with precise movements, "comes from a small experimental plantation on our ranch. We cultivate only 1,000 trees, in a specific area where the soil and microclimate are perfect. Each bean is hand-picked at the exact point of ripeness." Emily watched, fascinated, the transformation taking place before her eyes. The simple man from the coffee shop now demonstrated a deep and sophisticated knowledge about something she had always considered just a status symbol. "Why did you—" she began, hesitant. "Why didn't you say who you were yesterday morning?" Luke served 2 cups of the freshly prepared coffee before answering. "You know, Emily, I learned very early on that people tend to show their true character when they think they're not being observed." He paused, offering her one of the cups. "Try it." The first sip was a revelation. It was, without a doubt, the best coffee she had ever tasted in her life. Complex, full-bodied, with notes of chocolate and a touch of red fruits at the finish. "Impressive," she admitted, feeling even more embarrassed about her previous behavior. "Life is like that, Emily," Luke commented, his green eyes fixed on her. "The most valuable things don't always come in luxurious packaging." The meeting that followed was intense. Luke presented the plans for the ranch. Besides restoring the historic headquarters, the project would include an agricultural research center, a winery, and a boutique hotel focused on experience tourism. "We want people to understand the value of the land, sustainable production, the preservation of our history," he explained, showing images of the property on his tablet. "And we need an architect who understands both sophistication and authenticity." The hours flew by. Emily found herself completely involved in the project, and even more so by the passion with which Luke spoke about each detail. He knew every inch of the ranch, every story, every tradition. "We could do a technical visit this weekend," he suggested when it was already past noon, "so you could see the place in person." Emily's heart involuntarily raced. Of course, it would be fundamental for the project. "Great," he smiled, packing up his materials. "I'll send a helicopter to pick you up on Saturday at 8 a.m. The trip takes only 40 minutes. When Luke was already at the door, he turned one last time. "Oh, and Emily, you can wear boots and jeans. I guarantee no one will judge your appearance. There." The rest of the week passed in a blur of anxiety and expectation. Emily caught herself several times thinking about Luke, about how completely wrong she had been about him. It wasn't just his social position that impressed her now. It was his intelligence, his kindness, his way of seeing the world. On Saturday, punctually at 8 a.m., Emily boarded the Montgomery family helicopter. She had chosen designer jeans, Italian leather boots, and a simple but elegant white shirt. Her hair was tied in a casual ponytail, and for the first time in years she felt comfortable with a more natural look. The aerial view of the ranch took her breath away. It was thousands of acres of perfectly cultivated land, with the historic headquarters, a colonial-style mansion, surrounded by impeccable gardens and more modern constructions harmoniously integrated into the landscape. Luke was waiting for her at the helipad, dressed similarly to the day at the coffee shop, but now Emily saw beauty in the simplicity of his look. He seemed perfectly suited to the environment. "Welcome to Montgomery Ranch," he smiled, extending his hand to help her off the helicopter. The touch between their hands sent an electric current through Emily's entire body. Their eyes met for a moment too long, and she realized she was entering dangerous territory. She couldn't get involved with a client, especially not with Luke Montgomery. The technical visit turned into a journey of discovery. Luke showed every detail of the property, from the stables with purebred horses to the most modern processing facilities. He introduced her to the employees, who treated him with evident respect and affection. "Many of these families have been working with us for generations," he explained. "They're as much a part of this place's history as we are." During lunch, served on the mansion's porch overlooking the gardens, Emily couldn't help but notice how Luke treated the employees with the same courtesy he showed her. There wasn't a trace in him of the arrogance she herself had always displayed. "You know, Emily," he said as they savored a homemade dessert, "there's something I've been wanting to ask you since that day at the coffee shop." She felt her face flush. "Luke, about that day I really am sorry. I was so—" "Shh," he gently interrupted her. "That day was a gift. It showed me exactly who you were and who you could become, and I fell in love with both versions." The world seemed to stop when Luke leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a soft kiss full of promises. When they parted, Emily saw in his eyes all the future she could have if she had the courage to accept it. "You still haven't answered my question from that day," he smiled. "Do you believe in second impressions?" Emily laughed, tears now freely running down her face. "I believe in you," she answered. "In us." 1 year later, Luke's great-great-grandfather's old house was completely restored. Emily had personally overseen every detail of the renovation, blending historical elements with subtle modern touches. The result was a home that honored the past while embracing the future. On an October afternoon, very similar to the one of the coffee shop encounter, friends and family gathered to celebrate not only the inauguration of the restored house, but also Luke and Emily's wedding. Mrs. Johnson, the housekeeper, of course, was the first to embrace the newlyweds, her eyes shining with satisfaction. The ceremony was simple and elegant, reflecting the transformation Emily had undergone. Her wedding dress, although from a renowned designer, had the same unpretentious elegance that now characterized her life. During the party, Patricia approached the couple, raising her glass in a toast. "To the best, wrong first impression in history," she laughed, making everyone around smile. Emily looked at her husband, finding in those green eyes the same calm smile that had changed her life forever. She realized that she had found not only love, but a better version of herself. And it all started with a spilled coffee. Dear listeners, we hope that Emily and Luke's story has touched your hearts and perhaps made you reflect on how appearances can deceive us. To continue this journey of discovery and emotions, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here by clicking on the left. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and human relationships. Don't miss our upcoming content. We look forward to seeing you in the comments.